Name the 6 qualities you require in a duchess, your grace, and be truthful about them, because I cannot work from flattery and I will not be paid for guessing. The Duke of Trentham had engaged the woman on the strength of a single letter of recommendation, and it occurred to him, 40 seconds into their first interview, that he had very possibly made a mistake. You have a directness, Miss Cray. I have 3 weeks a year in which to earn what other people earn in 52, sir, and I am not paid to be charming. She had a notebook on her knee, bound in green canvas and a pencil, and she did not look up from either. 6 qualities. If you cannot give me 6, give me 4 and I shall not press you for the rest. But I must have them in your words, not your aunt's, because it is your marriage and I have made that error once before, and it cost a young woman a year of her life. Nathaniel Frayne sat down opposite her. He had not wanted this. His aunt had begun it, Lady Ardwick, who had spent 4 years saying that a Duke of 30 with no brother and a cousin in the wine trade had a duty, and it had ended, as everything with his aunt ended, in his agreeing to something in order to be left in peace. But the arrangement had been his own. He had put it in writing himself. Miss D. Cray, of Peel Street, confidential agent, engaged for a period of 3 months to introduce and report upon suitable connections. Fee of 80 guineas, 1/2 payable at the outset. Very well, he said. 1. She must be able to run a household of 40 and a table of 30 without hysterics. 2. She must not be afraid of me. 3. She must be able to sit in a room with me for 2 hours without talking and not sulk about it. 4. She must have some occupation of her own that has nothing to do with me. I do not care what it is, but she must have one, because I saw my mother spend 30 years with nothing to do but watch my father's door. He stopped. That is 4, 2 more. 5. She must tell me when I am wrong in private at once and not agree with me for a year and then despise me for it. Nathaniel found that he had turned his signet ring round twice. 6. I should like her to laugh at something, not at a joke. I cannot make jokes. At a thing that happens. Once a day would do. Miss Delphine Cray's pencil had stopped. She wrote for a moment, and then said in a rather different voice, "Those are the best 6 I have ever been given, sir, and I have asked 11 men. Most of them say handsome, well-connected, and £8,000 in that order, and then look out of the window." "And can you find her?" "I can find you 6 young women who satisfy 4 of the 6, said Delphine. "And if I am fortunate, one who satisfies 5, and no one on earth can promise you the 6th, because you cannot arrange laughter. Shall we begin? I shall want your aunt's list, your mother's list if she left one, the names of every family within 40 miles whom you would refuse outright and your reasons, and the whole of your dinner engagements for October." She worked, Nathaniel discovered, like a very good land agent. She was in Trentham's small library 6 days a fortnight for 11 weeks. She had the green notebook and 3 others, and a folded map, and a system of her own that involved colored tape. She interviewed mothers, chaperones, governesses, and this astonished him, the young women themselves alone for half an hour, and wrote down what they said. Miss Henrietta Vale, she reported in the 3rd week. 19. Handsome, excellent French, a good seat on a horse. She satisfies 1, 3, and 4, and she is terrified of you. I have never spoken to her. You spoke to her father for 11 minutes at the Aldwych sessions in June, and she has been dreading being brought forward ever since. She wishes to marry a clergyman named Purley, and has not dared say so to anybody but me. I have told her mother that I do not consider the connection suitable, and I have taken the whole of the blame for it, which is what I am for. She turned a page. Miss Adeline Beck. 3 and 20. A fine manager, not in the least afraid of you, plays the harp very ill and knows it, which I liked. She fails on 5. She agreed with me 11 times in half an hour on subjects where I was talking nonsense expressly to see whether she would. Deliberately. Of course deliberately, sir. You are paying me 80 guineas. She made a note. Lady Susan Freer, 6 and 20, keeps her father's accounts, has an occupation, she breeds spaniels and is famous for it in 2 counties, and she told me to my face that she thought your speech on the turnpike bill was cant. She satisfies 5 of the 6. I have asked her to the Ardwick dinner on the 9th. Lady Susan Freer came to the Ardwick dinner on the 9th, and Nathaniel sat next to her for 2 hours and liked her extremely, and knew within 20 minutes that he would never marry her, and could not for the life of him have said why. He said so afterward in the library at 11 at night, with the fire down. You cannot say why, Delphine repeated. No. Sir, that is the 4th. Miss Beck, Miss Ray, Miss Pritchard, and now Lady Susan, who is the best woman I have found in 11 weeks and who liked you very much, and I am obliged to tell you that she asked me, in the carriage, whether you were in love with somebody else. She put down her pencil. Are you? Nathaniel Frayne looked at the woman sitting across the hearth from him, 5 and 20. In the same dark blue gown she had worn 11 times, because it was the only good one she had, with ink on her second finger and her hair coming down at the back after a 14-hour day, holding a notebook in which she had written the 6 things he wanted most in the world and heard himself say, I do not know. Then I shall find you a 5th, said Delphine Cray, and stood up, and put her notebooks in her bag with hands that were not quite steady, and was gone before he had got out of his chair. He understood it on the 12th of November, at 4 in the afternoon, in the stable yard, and the manner of it was ridiculous. The old carriage horse carterman had got out of the paddock, as he did 4 times a year, and had walked into the yard and put his head in at the open door of the harness room and begun, with tremendous deliberation, to eat a hat that had been left on the bench. It was Delphine's hat. It was her only hat. She came out of the house, stopped, took in the situation, and stood with her hands on her hips watching a 22-year-old gelding chew the brim of the hat she had trimmed herself 3 seasons ago, and then she began to laugh. Not politely, helplessly, with her whole body, holding on to the door frame, until the grooms began laughing too, and Carterman lifted his head with the ribbon hanging out of his mouth, and looked at all of them with immense dignity, and she laughed harder. Nathaniel stood at the window of the tack room for a long moment. Once a day would do, he had said. She had done it every day for 11 weeks, at the colored tape, at his aunt's letters, at her own bad drawing of a spaniel, at a footman's sneeze in church. And he had heard every one of them, and had gone about his business with the peculiar contented feeling of a man whose house is warmer than it used to be, and had never once asked himself why. He walked out into the yard. Miss Cray, he said, I am going to say something and I have not prepared it, which you will observe. She was still wiping her eyes. Sir, I have engaged you for 3 months to find me a woman who can run a table of 30, is not afraid of me, can be silent with me, has an occupation of her own, tells me when I am wrong and laughs at something once a day. Nathaniel stopped, and then went on because there was no other honest road. Miss Cray, it has taken me 11 weeks to perceive that I described you, not deliberately. I did not know you when I said it. I had met you for 40 seconds. I described you in that room in September as though I were reading you off a page, and you wrote it down in your own hand, and you have spent 11 weeks looking for her, and she has been sitting on the other side of my hearth the entire time. The yard had gone very quiet. 2 grooms had discovered urgent business elsewhere. Delphine Cray had gone white to the lips. Say something, said Nathaniel. I am going to say a great deal, she said, and you will not enjoy any of it. Not here. In the library with the door open, and I would be obliged if you would send for your aunt." She stood by the library table with the 4 notebooks squared in front of her, and Lady Ardwick sat by the fire in considerable bewilderment, and Delphine Cray addressed them both like a woman giving evidence. "Ma'am, His Grace has this afternoon said something to me in the stable yard which I shall repeat to you exactly, so that nobody may afterward say that it was said in a corner." And she did repeat it, exactly, in a level voice, and Lady Ardwick's eyebrows went up into her cap and stayed there. "Now I shall tell you what I am," said Delphine. "I am the daughter of an attorney at Peel Street who died in debt. I have no fortune and no connection and no beauty to speak of, and I keep myself and my mother's sister by doing the one thing I am fitted for, which is knowing people. 11 families have employed me in 6 years. My whole trade rests on one thing only, that I am safe. That a mother may put her daughter in a room alone with me for half an hour and be certain that whatever the girl says will never be repeated, and that I have no interest of my own anywhere in the business." She turned to Nathaniel. "If I accept you," she said, "I am finished. Not because of the county, I do not care what the county says of me. I have been called worse than an adventuress and by better people. Because of the 11 families. Because Mrs. Vale, whose daughter told me in confidence that she loves a clergyman, will read in the paper that Miss Cray, who was paid 80 guineas to find the Duke of Trentham a wife, has married him herself, and she will believe, she cannot help but believe, that she was made a fool of in her own drawing-room, and she will say so, and she will be right to say so, and no mother in England will ever trust a confidential agent again. There are 2 other women in this country who do what I do. I should ruin them both along with myself." Lady Ardwick said slowly, "That is a great deal more honest than I expected." "It is worse than honest, ma'am. It is arithmetic." Delphine's hands had begun to shake, and she put them behind her. "And there is the other thing, which I shall say once. You are a Duke of 1830 with 11,000 acres. If I say yes, then for the rest of my life every person who looks at me will see a paid woman who was let into a great house to find a bride and kept the place for herself. That is what I should be. And in 20 years, when we quarreled, and we should quarrel, sir, you are extremely obstinate. That sentence would be lying about the house waiting to be picked up, and one of us would pick it up." Nathaniel Frayne discovered that his throat had closed. "Then what do you propose?" he said, "for you have plainly thought about it before this afternoon." "I have thought about it since the 3rd week of October, and I have been ashamed of every hour of it." She opened the top notebook. "I propose to finish my commission. There is a 5th name. I found her a fortnight ago and did not bring her forward, and I am not proud of the reason. Miss Rowena Deacon of Coldwell, 24, manages her uncle's estate of 2,000 acres, is afraid of nothing living, keeps bees, and told me that she thought your turnpike speech was the only sensible thing said in the Lord's last session. She satisfies all 6 as far as I can judge without seeing her laugh." She set the book down. "You will meet her. That is what I was paid for, and I will not be paid for less. And on the 12th of December, when my 3 months are out, I shall return the whole 80 guineas. I have not spent a shilling of it. It is in a box at Peel Street, and I shall close my account with this house, and you and I shall not meet again." "Miss Cray—" "I have not finished." Her voice cracked for the first time. "You said in September that she must tell you when you are wrong in private at once. So I am telling you now, and I would rather it were in front of your aunt. You are not wrong about what you feel. I believe you entirely, and She stopped and steadied herself and went on. "And I am not free to have it. Some things cost more than they are worth to everybody except the 2 people holding them. That is all. Good evening, ma'am." She got as far as the door. "11 families," said Nathaniel. Delphine turned. 11 families and 2 other women in the trade, he said. That is the whole of the objection, not the county, not my aunt, not your father's debts which I do not care about, nor your hat, which Cardamon has eaten and which I shall replace with 11 others. 11 families and 2 women in Peel Street. Have I stated your case correctly? You have. Then give me a fortnight, said the Duke of Trentham, and do not close your account, and do not return 1 guinea, and go and find Miss Deacon of Coldwell, exactly as you said, because you are right about that, and I will not have you paid for less. 14 days. If at the end of them I have not answered the whole of your objection to your own satisfaction, I shall let you go and never trouble you again, and I shall write you a character that will get you 50 commissions. Delphine Cray looked at him for a long moment. 14 days, she said. He met Miss Rowena Deacon of Coldwell on the 18th and liked her, and told her the truth within the hour, the whole of it, because she was the sort of woman one told the truth to. She laughed until she had to sit down on a mounting block, and then she said, "Your Grace, I shall help. My uncle says I meddle. He is quite right." What Nathaniel Frayne did in 14 days was not romantic in the smallest degree, and Delphine Cray told him afterward that it was the only thing in the world that could have moved her. He wrote in his own hand to all 11 families who had ever employed her, and to the 2 other women in the trade, and to every mother whose daughter Delphine had brought forward at Trentham. 31 letters. Each one set out, plainly and in order, the date of the engagement and its terms, that the commission had been fully performed, that Miss Cray had brought forward 5 ladies, of whom the last was, in his own judgment, entirely suitable, that Miss Cray had discouraged an unsuitable connection at the cost of the fee's renewal, and had refused to disclose 1 word said to her in confidence, then or since, that his own attachment had been formed in the 11th week, and declared by him, unasked, in a stable yard, and that Miss Cray had refused him on the ground that her client's trust was not hers to spend, and that he considered her, having watched her work for 3 months at close quarters, the most scrupulous person of business he had ever employed, of either sex. He asked each of them to say so publicly, if they believed it. 28 of the 31 replied. Mrs. Vale of the daughter and the clergyman wrote 4 pages, of which the last page was addressed to Delphine, and was, Nathaniel was told, unreadable for the blots. The 2 other confidential agents wrote a joint letter which they permitted him to have printed in the Aldwych paper, and which ended with the observation that if a duke's word could not settle the matter, they did not know what could. Miss Rowena Deacon of Coldwell wrote to 11 of her own connections, without being asked. On the 2nd of December he laid the whole bundle on the library table, 31 letters and 28 answers, and said, "Read them. Take as long as you like. I shall be in the yard with a horse who owes you a hat." She came out to him at dusk, with her eyes swollen, and the last letter still in her hand. "You wrote 31 letters," she said. "I wrote 43. 12 were not fit to send." Nathaniel put down the curricomb. "Delphine, your objection was that everybody who saw you would see a paid woman who kept the place for herself. There are now upward of 30 households in this kingdom holding a letter in my hand which says exactly what happened and in what order, and every one of them has been asked to repeat it. I cannot silence the county. I can put the truth in front of it in writing, permanently, over my name, before there is anything to be silent about. It is the only kind of gift I know how to make." "It is a better one than jewels," said Delphine unsteadily, "and I should have thrown jewels at your head." "I know it. I asked Miss Deacon, who was very clear on the point." He took the green notebook out of his coat. She had left it on the table, and he had taken it, which he admitted at once was a liberty, and opened it to the last page, where a hand that was not hers had written 11 lines. I have entered a sixth candidate in your own book, since you would not. You will find her described under the 6 heads. I have been strictly professional. You may quarrel with the assessment. Delphine Cray read 11 lines in a stable yard in the last of the December light, and then she put the notebook against her chest and held it there. You have written that she laughs at horses, she said. Once a day, said Nathaniel. It is the only one of the 6 I could not have arranged, and it is the one I could not do without. Marry me. Yes, said Delphine Cray. They were married at Trentham on the 8th of January, and the bride's hat was new, and Cardamon was brought to the church gate by 2 grooms in order that he might be formally forgiven, which he permitted. Miss Rowena Deacon of Coldwell stood as chief bridesmaid and made a speech at the breakfast, uninvited, in which she informed 400 people that she had been the 5th candidate, and had been quite the best of them and had been passed over, and that she bore no resentment whatever, as she had seen the 2 of them in the same room, and had no wish to compete with an act of God. Mrs. Vale came, and wept. Lady Ardwick took the entire credit and was permitted to keep it. And the green canvas notebook stayed in the drawer of the Duchess of Trentham's writing table for the rest of her life, with 11 lines at the back in her husband's hand, and their 5 children were shown it, one by one, when each was old enough to be told that their mother had been paid 80 guineas to find their father a wife, and had done the work honestly, and had refused, for 11 weeks and 14 days, to be the answer.